Good morning, and welcome to White Bear Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm Roger Upham. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm a member of our board of directors. It's good to be here together, a community of youth, adults, and children, sharing in the values of courage, reverence, and compassion. I warmly invite you to join our cyber social hour, which will begin in 5 minutes after the postlude. Welcome to our church. Together, we grow our souls and serve the world.
Come into this place which we make holy by our presence. Come in with all your vulnerabilities and strengths, fears and anxieties, loves and hopes. For here you need not hide, nor pretend, nor be anything other than who you are and who you are called to be. Come into this place where we can touch and be touched, heal and be healed, forgive and be forgiven. Come into this place where the ordinary is sanctified, the human is celebrated, the compassionate is expected. Come into this place. Together, we make it a holy place. I'm Reverend Roger, and my pronouns are he, him.
Good morning. I'm Janet Urbanowitz. My pronouns are she and her. As an editor of 3 different newsletters for 20 years or so, I've done a fair amount of expository writing. With that said, I don't think of myself as creative, especially in this congregation, filled as it is with members of awe-inspiring talent and creativity. I have, however, off and on over many years, kept a journal, which I might describe as creativity light. Some of the journaling dealt with difficult times in my life, but much was inspired by sweet family moments or simply by my sense of humor. I would like to share what prompted that journaling in one extended instance. About 15 years ago, when I was caring a couple days a week for my 2 young grandchildren, my son asked me if I would email him and his wife at work some cubby notes each day, primarily to report on how the children were behaving, whether they napped, and what they ate. That gave me an idea. Wouldn't it be much more fun, I thought, to write instead each day something amusing or interesting about the children, showing what they were like as little persons? The result, ultimately, was more than 60 pages of anecdotes, which my son appreciated enough to save. I would just like to describe 4 of those brief anecdotes to illustrate. Many entries had to do with their imaginative play. 2 children. This is one. Liam wanted to play dinosaurs after we got back from the bus today. He told me he was the trainer. I was the dinosaur. When I asked him what I was learning today as a dinosaur, he told me we were working on roars. After some practice, I was doing well enough to have a snack, which he told me was called dinosaur energy. On another day, after saving me from bad guys and wicked witches invading our castle, Liam said he needed a new night suit or suit of armor. When I asked him where he would get that, he quickly replied, Target, and went into the bedroom to get the play shopping cart. Pushing it into the living area, he asked me to point out the night suit aisle, where he chose the green one. And it turns out we had a baby too, riding in the shopping cart, and we had to go back to Target for a matching night suit for the baby. As Audrey and I approached the bus stop this morning, she suddenly turned to me and exclaimed, "Oh, Grandma, I can hardly believe I'm in kindergarten." Audrey was very engaged again this morning, using your cast-off keyboard and pretending to be an office worker, busy doing emails and making calls to other departments, including tech services, for help with a computer crash. Her dad worked in computers. She had picked up some of the lingo. Writing these anecdotes was enjoyable for me and helped me really notice my grandchildren, really be present to them. And it provided a few moments of amusement to their parents near the end of their working days. I light this chalice this morning in honor of our many and varied small instances of creativity that lift our own spirits and brighten the days of our family members.
I'm Nico, and my pronouns are they, them. Join me in the unison opening words. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Join now in singing our opening hymn, number 1051, We Are.
Morning star mercy and brothers of love. We are lovers of love and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are.
Some of the stories we love and learn from are ancient long texts whose lessons continue to be interpreted and reinterpreted as humanity shifts and calls for new understandings. But just as important are the stories from people's lives and experiences and the sparks of creativity and meaning-making held within. One such short story, called A Painter's Creative Process from Spirit in Practice, tells of a contemporary painter named Deborah Jones Buck, who has what many consider an unusual approach to her work. And though this story is short, there's a lot to learn from it. When it is time to paint, Deborah lines up her brushes, selects her paints, and settles down in front of a brand new blank canvas. She picks up a brush and creates a picture that covers the whole canvas, and it's beautiful. She then cleans her brushes and heads into the other room for a while the paint dries. And when Deborah returns to the room, she confirms that her new beautiful painting is completely dry. Then she lines up her brushes, selects her paints, and paints a new picture right on top of the one she just created. This picture is beautiful too and covers the whole canvas. Deborah cleans her brushes and lets the paint dry again. And when it's dry, Deborah comes back with clean brushes and her paints and adds another picture and another on top of the first picture she made on that fresh blank canvas. Eventually, she puts the canvas aside with its layers and layers of paint, 5 or 6 paintings resting all on top of one another. And then she prepares a new canvas and starts all over again. Paint, let it dry, repeat, again and again and again. Deborah does not keep a record of the pictures she paints before covering them up. She takes no photographs and keeps no sketches. She knows that a lot of artwork is created specifically so that it will last, like the old paintings in a museum, hung in special frames behind protective glass and special lighting to preserve it, or the metal sculptures that sit outside in all kinds of weather to remind generations and generations of some special event long ago. But for Deborah, the point is not to create something that will last forever. She just has so many images in her head that she has to get them out, even if no one ever sees them. And between the time that the image is painted and when it is dry enough to be painted over, the artwork is just as wonderful as it would be if it were preserved for hundreds of years to come.
This congregation is exclusively sustained by the generosity of the people who call this place home. By giving to this morning's offering, you are giving to the life of WBUUC's mission of growing souls and serving the world. You can donate on the WBUUC webpage or follow the prompt on the screen. Thank you for your generosity and your faith in this life we live together.
Wherever you are this morning, I invite you now to enter into a time of meditation, centering, and prayer. Pay attention to a few breaths in and out. Notice your body, this imperfect, beautiful gift that is part of who each of us are. Notice your emotions at this moment. Notice your thoughts. You don't need to do anything about thoughts or emotions, just noticing. These two are part of who we are. And now notice whatever is at the center of who you are. Maybe it's your identity or your spirit or your soul or the divine within or that which ultimately concerns you. Each of us in this diverse spiritual community has a different view of this. Take a moment to notice your surroundings. Feel the floor or the ground. Feel the grounding that you have on this pale blue dot in the middle of a sprawling galaxy and its 100 to 400 billion stars. This weekend, we pause to remember those who have been killed in the wars that our country has fought. Regardless of whether the war was just, whether it was a fight to end slavery or stop Hitler or subjugate another sovereign nation like the Philippines, each of these soldiers gave their last full measure of their lives. And so we honor them, we remember them and their loved ones they left behind. And may we also remember today and mourn all those soldiers and civilians killed in battle, in wars, including even now in places like Ukraine and Sudan. And let's take a moment in our hearts to hold those who are suffering, including those in our own lives, perhaps ourselves in the life of this congregation and people beyond. May all who are suffering from physical and mental illness, addiction, poverty, violence, oppression, and injustice, may they all feel support and love. May human beings find a better way to diminish poverty, violence, oppression, war. May the dream of a world in which we can all live in peace, where every one of us can be who we are and who we are called to be, may that dream become more than just a distant dream. And I invite you now to hold in your hearts those in your own life who you are concerned about, worried about, and if you wish to name them aloud into the space where you are. Amen.
The reading today is a Reader's Theater adaptation of Mary Zimmerman's version of The Odyssey. Zimmerman is a contemporary American playwright, and the piece we'll hear today opens the play. Roger will play an actor, maybe even Homer himself. There will be a brief visit from a muse, the deities in ancient Greece who were seen to be the source of creative inspiration.
Sing in me, Muse, and through me tell the story of that man skilled in ways of contending. Sing in me, Muse, and through me Sing in me, Muse, and through me tell the story of the man skilled in all ways of contending, the wanderer harried for years on end after he plundered the stronghold on the proud height of Troy. He saw the townslands and learned the minds of many different people and weathered many bitter nights and days in his deep heart at sea, while he fought only to save his life, to bring his shipmates home. But not by will nor valor could he save them. Of these adventures, Muse, tell us in our time. Lift the great song again. Many years ago, I was working late on a Saturday night on a sermon. The sermon was about the mythological Jesus. The main point of the sermon was that I don't really care whether there is even a shred of historical truth in the story of Jesus. What I care about is that it's a good story, and it contains truths about my life, about how to live my life. So here's the scene. It's 10 or 11 o'clock at night, and I've got nothing. I've just got a few fragments that have nothing holding them together. There's no clock, but I feel the clock ticking away, the time ticking away, me inching closer to pushing the panic button. And suddenly, out of nowhere, an image pops into my head. It's an altar painting by Matthias Grunewald. It's one that I talked about last year in the Easter service. It's a painting that I'd seen 15 years earlier, that a colleague, Mark Bellatini, had mentioned in a sermon that I heard maybe, 4 years before that. And it popped in my head. The Issenheim altarpiece is the name of it. The piece dates to the early 1500s, and it contains several panels, one of which is a crucifixion panel. It's one of those gruesome images that I generally don't care for of the crucifixion. Fingers distended, limbs twisting, blood oozing from various wounds, and maybe most hideous of all, these festering sores all over Jesus' body. And another panel on the altarpiece paints an entirely different picture of Jesus. It depicts this beautiful, fully healed, radiant, and joyous risen Christ shooting up from the grave. Gone are the lesions, gone is the pain. I have to say that when I first saw that panel back in college, it struck me as kind of hokey. But the interesting thing, as I learned from Mark Bellatini, is that Grunewald painted this altarpiece for a hospital chaplain, and that many of the patients of that hospital suffered the same gruesome skin disease that produced the kind of lesions that Grunewald painted in that painting. So imagine the power of that painting for those patients. Here is their Lord suffering just as they were suffering, and here he is, healed. The patients experience Jesus not as a historical person who lived in the distant 1,500 years earlier, but as a living presence right there in their hospital, in the midst of their suffering with them. Jesus was a presence that acknowledged the terror of their disease and also conveyed a sense of hope, a sense that they were all something more than their disease. The image certainly provided some solace for some of those folks. So this, I think, as I sit there in my dining room struggling with the sermon, this is a picture of the timeless mythological Jesus. And with that image in mind, the sermon instantly gelled. I looked around the dining room. Where did that come from? A second story. One time at a church class I was leading a long time ago, I invited participants to use art supplies that we had assembled to create an image. An image of the divine, or whatever it is that is of ultimate concern to them. So I'll be honest, although I was not honest with them initially, I hate this kind of project. I have a lot of voices whispering in my head, you are not creative, you don't have an artistic bone in your body, you're going to create something that everyone's going to laugh at, you can't do this. Call these voices the anti-muses. I figured as the leader of the class that I'd just make myself too busy to actually do the project. But I could sense some resistance to the assignment, which I understood because I would have been resisting it had I expected to do it. And the better angels of my nature whispered, you better do this project too, buddy. And so I took a deep breath and tried to open myself to the creative process. I decided to go up to that supply table without any preconceived notions about what I might try to create. I tried to let the supplies and the possibilities speak to me. This was venturing into new, scary territory for me. So up I went, I grabbed some Play-Doh and some pipe cleaners and some shiny half marbles and returned to my seat. I sat there looking at the supplies, and I thought about images of the divine that spoke to me. And the one that came was a craggy tree seemingly growing out of a rock. I bet a lot of you have seen that. I love seeing that little miracle in nature. It speaks to me of the divine, too. The divine, this unquenchable spirit of life, is beautifully imperfect and tenacious and springs forth sometimes when and where we least expect it. The divine, if there is such a thing, to me is grounded in this world, in the rocky earth itself. So the black Play-Doh I picked became the earth. Gold pipe cleaners became the tree trunk, the green pipe cleaners, the leaves. The shiny half marbles became rocks, and then I realized, wait a minute, there were stones up on the table, so I swapped out the marbles for the stones. I created an image of the divine that I absolutely loved. As I sat there looking at it, I thought, where did that come from? I can't pretend it's an artistic masterpiece, but it was meaningful to me. And like the person in Nico's story, it was not something created for a museum or for all time. It was something that I got rid of at some point along the line, but I remember it. I can picture it. Here's another story. This one's not mine. This is the story of the people on Earth who saved the wounded Apollo 13 spacecraft from what seemed like certain doom. As the movie depicted, after the spacecraft's explosion, a bunch of NASA scientists and technicians gathered at a table with all of the contents of stuff on board the spaceship. This is what they had to work with, things like duct tape and manuals, operating manuals. And while the crew struggled to keep the ship at least alive for a little while, the ground crew tried to figure out, with these supplies, what critical needs could we meet? And they figured out how the space crew could use these things. You know, they couldn't read it in the manual, but they could use the manual physically as part of the fix. So they try one idea and conclude, nope, that's not going to work. Try another, nope, another, nope, until finally they figured it out together. They figured it out. Where did they get that ingenuity? You know, not the operator manuals. Where did that come from? Well, when I wonder about the creative process in its many forms, these are examples, the ideas of process theology help me make sense of it. So the central assertion of process theology is that we human beings co-create the world with the divine. God and process theology is this force pulling us forward, a creative force pulling us forward. God is the force encouraging us to be good and whole people. God is love. But it's we who make the decisions. We take actions. God doesn't do these things for us. God doesn't make us do these things. We do these things, perhaps encouraged or influenced by God or not. We are, as the writer Michelle Shea suggests, playmates with God, and our shared playground is the universe. So in this process view, everything we do helps create or shape the world. Each of our individual lives is one giant creative exercise. With each step forward, we create something. Sometimes it's beautiful. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it lasts. Mostly it doesn't. But each moment of life, as we step forward, each moment is a creative moment. This is what process theology means when it talks about us co-creating the world with God. So the implication of this is that all of us are creative, that if we're alive, we're creative, even if we can't draw a stick figure or rhyme a line to save our lives. Even if we can't match musical pitches and dance, or we dance like we have two left feet, telling myself I was not creative was a lie. We are all creative. And another implication of this belief is that creativity isn't limited to just the arts. The Apollo 13 ground crew's efforts to figure out how they could get the ship safely home was every bit as infused with creative opportunity as my stepping up to the craft supply table, of course, with much higher stakes. Life presents us with one creative possibility after another. But where does this creativity come from? The ancient Greeks had an answer that creativity comes from the Muses. These goddesses who are the Muses come up to you and maybe they grab a book or a manual that you're looking at and fling it and say, whisper in your ear, or whisper inside you, this is what you could do. Did the Greeks mean that creativity literally comes from the Muses? I don't think so. At least that's not how I interpret their explanation. The Muse whispering in our ears or our souls provides a picture of where creativity comes from. It's an image, it's a metaphor. It portrays what it feels like when that creative idea pops into our consciousness. So I didn't feel like a muse burst into my dining room and whispered Isenheim altarpiece in my ear as I panicked about that sermon. But I did feel that image popped into my consciousness from somewhere outside of me or somewhere very deep inside me. And picturing a muse whispering the idea to me, well, that's a pretty good image for me of what happened. And though the muse explanation is not literally true for me, it does capture certain truths about the creative process. One significant truth for me is that creativity comes from something beyond me, at least beyond my rational mind. There is some alchemy of brain and experience and wisdom that adds up to more than me. There is something, well, to me, I'll use the word divine about creativity, not divine like the God of orthodoxy zapping it into me, but divine in the process theology sense of co-creation, of a beautiful work of art, of a simple work of art, or solving a problem. You never quite know when the muse will arrive. I don't think there's anything I can do to compel it to arrive, but I do think there are ways I can invite the muse to visit. I can slow down and be quiet. I can connect with nature. That's a way that often works for me. And these things create in me an openness, a receptivity. Sometimes I wonder if the muse actually isn't trying to whisper to me more often and I just miss it because I'm too busy or too preoccupied or too anxious. May each of us recognize that the muse, or whatever it is, this creative thing within us, may that visit us often. May each of us know that we too are creative people, and may that creativity shine forth in our lives in all of our works of creation. May it be so. Amen. Our closing hymn today is number 77, Seek Not Afar for Beauty. I invite you, wherever you are, to join in singing.
Seek not afar for beauty, though it glows in dew-wet grasses all about your feet, in birds in sunshine, childish faces sweet, in stars and mountain summits topped with snows.
Please join me in the closing words. May peace dwell within our hearts and understanding in our minds. May courage steel our will and love of truth forever guide us.